Everybody, once again, I am back. Once again, just coming to you, new authors, with some information to help you to become a to become the best version of yourself as a new author. For those of you that are joining me, thank you so much for tuning in. If you're tuning in live, I appreciate it. Do me a favor, go ahead and hit that like button, hit that share button. We're doing these videos every single day to give new authors and even experienced authors a little bit more game to help them through this writing process, because most people think it's easy. I'm just going to write my book. I'm going to write and it's going to be great. It's going to be a bestseller. It doesn't work like that. These are just to give you some nuggets, to give you some game, help you out, help you go to the next level with your writing. Again, for those of you that do not know me, my name is Ray Destin Jr. I'm the founder and CEO of BOBM Publishing, LLC. We are a full-service publishing house that has helped over 265 authors become Amazon #1 best-selling authors. So with that being said, let's jump into it. Today, as you see, the title of today's video is Writing for Impact. Writing for Impact. And what does that mean? When I talk about writing for impact, and by the way, hey, Mom, hey, Pop, if y'all tuning in, love y'all. For when we talk about writing for impact, I'm talking about making sure that your book has a message that lives on, that can be applied to the person's life that is reading what you've written. A lot of people write some amazing stuff, but they leave off a chance for the people to actually see themselves in their writing. They leave off the chance for people to apply it to their life. They leave off the chance for those life lessons to really kick in. So when I'm talking about writing for impact, this can be applied to both fiction and nonfiction books, mostly nonfiction, especially if you're talking about your story, if you're talking about the things that you're going through. I guarantee you the next book that I write will be a bestseller. Just the things that I'm living through as we speak. So if you're writing to help someone through a situation, if you're writing to help someone learn a specific tool or specific resource, something along those lines, this is for you. So one of the first things that you want to do, and I'm actually just going to list them out and then I'm going to come back and break them down individually for you. So things that you want to include in your writing, you want to include those key points. You want to include a storyline or stories. We'll get into that in a minute. Descriptive writing, make sure that they can feel what you're talking about. And also you want to build the scene, build that momentum for that climax, right? Won't jump into it too much, but let's go back and let's pull this, let's unwrap what we just talked about. Because that was just the top level. So when I say those key points, and I talk about this every time I do a live with you, key points are pick about 3 to 5 key points in your book or in your chapter that you want them to walk away with, that you want them to walk away more educated about as an author. If you are sharing something about how to learn a specific tool, then give them those key points that if they just do the skim version, or if they go back and do the cliff notes. If for those of us a little bit older, we remember cliff notes for certain books that we had to read in high school or in college, right? If they're doing the cliff notes version, then those key points are things that they can look at and say, wait a minute, what is this? And then they go back through your chapter. But those key points should be at the end, kind of as an outline of what we just talked about, right? In training, they say, tell them what you're going to tell them, and then tell them what you just told them. So that's the last part, telling them what you just told them. With those key points, you can take that out and turn it into one or two things. You can turn it into a curriculum for a coaching program, or you can turn it into some type of a workbook that will help them in the long run. The reason that those workbooks and those curriculums help is because now they have activities to go along with the information that they just learned. So that's the first part, is making sure that you have those key points that they can grow through as they go through it. The second thing is the storyline. If you are writing a book about your life, or if you're just writing a book that is filled with lessons, one thing that you want to include are storylines. You want to draw them in with the message, because most people will forget what you said long after you said it if you just give them one fact. But if you give them a story that goes along with it, that walks them through, how did this start? Where did it go? How did this end? Now you have something that they can see themselves jumping into. They can relate to it. And not only can they relate to it, but they're picking up nuggets along the way. They're picking up their own lessons along the way. So if we look at any great book, you'll notice that it's filled with stories. If you read a New York Times bestseller, they're going to tell you about how they came up with this particular process. If you read the Bible, it's filled with parables. It's filled with stories, so that no matter what situation you're in, you can relate to that story, even though you may not immediately understand that lesson, but you understand that story. And at the end of it, when you add that lesson in there, now they get a chance to actually see where you were taking them, and it gives them a chance to learn specifically based on that story. Just like any great movie, if one of my favorite movies is Rudy, right? I'll give y'all Rudy instead of giving y'all Scarface. In the movie Rudy, we see this little bitty kid who has a desire to play football, but he's the quote unquote runt of the group. And because he's the runner of the group, they always counted him out. But he had what? He had heart. So he goes to college after he loses his best friend in a landmine, not in a landmine, but in a plant fire. And then he goes off and he's trying to get into Notre Dame. And Notre Dame is like, nah, you ain't got the grades for us, but go down the street to Holy Cross. If you can get through Holy Cross, then they may be able to get you over here to Notre Dame after a year or two. He worked at it. He found himself a tutor. Finally met the coach for Notre Dame and said, hey, coach, I'm going to play for you. Coach was like, yeah, whatever. Okay. I'll see you next year for tryouts. Next year is the tryouts. Are you going to be here? He said, I don't know my grades. Well, he got past the grade situation. And once he got past his grades, he made the backup team. A little bit disappointed in himself, but he was so aggressive and so hungry for it that he stuck with it. And as he stuck with it, he ended up getting on the field for the final game of his senior year. And that last play of his senior year is when everybody's like, Rudy, Rudy, Rudy. And he's just excited about it. He's nervous. He doesn't know what to do, but he makes the sack. And it's almost instant. If you followed the storyline through the movie, that last hit of the game, tears are just flowing. I'm not scared to admit it. Every time I watch the movie, I got tears flowing because I can understand where Rudy was coming from. He had heart. He was counted out. He was a little guy. Your story should be so relatable to others that they pick up on the things that you're putting down. They are following the story. They can see themselves in the story. They fall in love with the main character. And not only do they fall in love with the main character, but when it's all said and done, there's this moment of triumph or this moment of victory that you leave them with. So that's your storyline. Next thing is descriptive writing. What is descriptive writing? Descriptive writing is not saying, hey, I love that movie too, Gina. That's one of my favorite movies of all times. Ever. Like, yeah, we can talk about it. The next thing is descriptive writing. Descriptive writing is bringing in the five senses. And I always get these mixed up, but sight, touch, taste, feel, sight, and sound. Touch, taste, feel, sight, and sound, right? When you bring in the five senses, different people respond based on different things. Some people are extremely visual, so they have to see what you're talking about. Some people are food lovers. You bring in what something tastes like, and they're like, "Ooh, I can feel it. I'm hungry now, just thinking about it." Some people are audible listeners. They listen instead of watching. I can tell you everything about a speech by listening to what they're saying. I can see the entire scene. Some people, it is touch for them. That's one of their main senses. And then sight. is I think I got them all. Touch, taste. Y'all get the point. When you touch on those different emotions and you touch on those different senses, what happens is that people begin to relate more because you didn't just tell them it's hot outside. How hot is it? Is it Texas hot? Is it California hot, which is a cool breeze and or a little bit of sun, probably about 72 to 80, and then a cool breeze in the evening? Is it New York hot? What type of hot is it? What's the temperature? Give them some comparisons. It was it was hot as fire. It was hot as a Texas sunny day. It was it was hot as I don't know. It was hot like chili, right? So give them something that they can relate to. Give them some analogies to the senses, so that as they're reading your story, they are beginning to use their senses and diving into it at a deeper level, right? The last thing is building the scene. Again, just like we just talked about in Rudy, they built the scene up so that that last play was the main point in the movie. You can do anything if you don't give up. So some other examples of building the scene up. If you watch my other favorite movie, Scarface, and thank you. In the movie Scarface, the main character, we know he's an immigrant from Cuba, and comes up through the ranks, and he comes up through the ranks in the drug game, becomes a kingpin himself, and has so much money and so much power that people begin to fall in love with his character. They fall in love with his charisma. They fall in love with his stand-up machismo. They fall in love with the fact that he's not willing to back down to anyone. They fall in love with his loyalty to his friends, his loyalty and his conviction to get the job done no matter what. The final scene, you can tell something is brewing as he goes and he visits his brother, or not his brother. He goes to visit his sister and finds out that his sister and his best friend are now married. From that moment forward, the scene is built. His mind goes into a whirlwind spin. He jumps into he gets in the car and just goes, and we know what he's sitting there at the table. There's a substance in front of him. We're not going to talk about that. And there's intruders because of all the things that he's done to rise to power. He's crossed a few people along the way, not intentionally, but unintentionally. He crossed a few people, and one of those people had the vendetta. The scene is built for the final scene of the movie, which is this all-out gunfight. In the all-out gunfight, we saw it coming. We saw all his characteristics start to come back into picture. His machismo, his I'm not backing down, his you come for me, I'm coming right back for you. And we know how that movie ends. So as you are writing, include some of these elements in your writing. Include the key points so that people can go back and they can apply the lessons that you just taught them. Include the storyline. Facts tell, stories sell. Include that descriptive writing. Bring in those senses. Bring in all 5 senses: touch, taste, sight, sound, smell, right? Bring in all 5 of those senses. And then the last thing is build the scene. Don't just give them the answer. Build the momentum behind it. Tell them what the scene looked like before you give them the punchline. That's the reason that some comedians are funny and some comedians fail. They give you the joke without giving you the storyline. So if you apply these things to your writing, it'll make you a much more powerful writer. For those of you who are new and looking to get your books out there, apply these lessons as you begin. For those of you who have experienced writing a book or written a book or two, and you're wondering why it's just sitting there and nobody's talking about it, apply these things to add impact to your writing, because that impactful writing is going to create more opportunities for you in the future than you can even begin to imagine. So once again, if this information was helpful, do me a favor, drop a like, drop a heart, go ahead and share it with somebody, because there's plenty of writers out there and we're trying to help them get those books out of their heads onto the paper and making an impact for those of you out there who are waiting on them. So once again, my name is Sugar Ray Destin Jr. Love you guys, and I'll talk to y'all next time. Love y'all.